There's something seriously wrong in Britain right now. And no, it's not just a usual political back and forth. It's a full-blown public safety crisis that's hit the streets, the headlines, and most importantly, the trust people once had in the system that was supposed to protect them. According to recent reports, over 40,000 predators are now walking free across the country. You heard that right, 40,000. And here's the kicker. These aren't vague stats tucked away in some obscure spreadsheet. This comes on the heels of a sixth, with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now. It's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss. Like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. 52% rise in sex offenses committed by foreign nationals. Let that number sink in. We're now at a point where sexual assault occurs every 7 minutes in the UK. That's 8 assaults an hour. Nearly 200 a day. For a country that prides itself on modern values, safety, and accountability, this isn't just a red flag. It's a 5-alarm fire. Parents are terrified. Mothers are walking their daughters home from school. Fathers are organizing neighborhood watches. The tone isn't cautious, it's desperate. Across cities, protests are erupting, demanding that the government finally put public safety over political optics. And it's not just about the rise in violence. It's about who's being protected and who's being left behind. Critics are pointing straight to the SDS-40 scheme, a controversial government policy that's quickly become the symbol of political betrayal. Under this scheme, opponents argue that the government is effectively importing future voters, a calculated move dressed up as humanitarian policy. They claim this isn't about compassion. It's about long-term control. According to political voices like Nigel Farage, this isn't incompetence. It's deliberate. A strategy to engineer demographic shift favorable to the ruling party's agenda, even if it means compromising national security in the process. And the numbers only fuel the fire. Thousands of foreign offenders, many convicted of serious crimes, are reportedly allowed to remain in the UK. Deportation? Delayed or denied. In many cases, these individuals are released early from prison, back onto the streets, with no effective oversight. Meanwhile, law-abiding citizens are expected to simply cope with the consequences. That's not all. Reports say that key demographic details in crime statistics are being actively suppressed, allegedly to prevent public backlash. The idea that the public shouldn't know who's committing crimes in their own communities? That's not just infuriating. It's dangerous. This isn't fear-mongering. This is what people on the ground are seeing, living, and reacting to. Migrant centers have become... I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe. And like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. Flashpoints, not just for tension, but for outright clashes between police and migrants. In some areas, law enforcement is reportedly stretched so thin, or so unwilling to intervene, that they are effectively retreating. Streets once considered safe are now no-go zones. And it's not just British voices raising concerns. Even former US President Donald Trump has weighed in, calling out what he sees as Britain's suicidal policies. According to him, the UK has lost control of its borders and its future. He compares Britain's approach unfavorably to US operations like ICE, which he claims have deported over 800,000 illegal immigrants. His take? Britain needs a version of that. Now, this isn't just about crime. It's about sovereignty, or the loss of it. When a country can't control who stays and who goes, or even speak openly about it, that's not just mismanagement. It's something deeper. Something structural. The social contract, that unspoken agreement between government and citizen, is breaking down. You protect us, and we follow the rules. But what happens when the rules seem to protect the wrong people? When a citizen defending their own family faces harsher consequences and a repeat offender shielded by bureaucracy, communities aren't just disillusioned. They are taking matters into their own hands. Underground networks are reportedly forming to distribute self-defense tools. Parents are installing surveillance systems. Vigilante patrols are no longer plot lines from dystopian fiction. They are showing up on real-life streets. And what's the government's response? Critics say it's been a cocktail of denial, distraction, and doublespeak. The moment someone raises concerns, they are labeled reactionary, or worse. But that narrative is cracking. Public anger is growing louder, and the question echoing through protests and social media is simple. Why are foreign criminals being protected more than our own citizens? Judicial loopholes and international human rights laws are cited as reasons the UK can't deport certain individuals. But to the average person, it doesn't matter how polished the legal reasoning is. What matters is a growing feeling that laws designed to protect society are now protecting its predators instead. And through it all, public money keeps flowing to house, support, and enable illegal arrivals, even as British pensioners, single mothers, and vulnerable citizens are left to scrape by. At the same time, self-defense tools remain restricted, and communities are warned not to take action, even as the system fails to act itself. For many, you've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm. It's a betrayal of values, of duty, of trust. A country that once stood for law and order now feels like it's standing back and watching the chaos unfold. This isn't some isolated incident. This is a pattern. A steady erosion of control masked as policy. A refusal to acknowledge red flags that were raised years ago. And the fallout is already here. Sexual assaults are up. Public trust is down. And the perception that the justice system plays favorites? Stronger than ever. Opposition leaders are calling for emergency reforms. Specialized deportation units, legal adjustments to override international blocks, and transparency in crime reporting. But the public isn't just waiting. They are acting. Because many feel the government isn't just slow to respond. It doesn't want to respond. Whether it's the early release of dangerous offenders or the deliberate vagueness in official crime reports, critics argue this isn't misjudgment. It's political will. A will to shape society in ways that benefit power structures at the top while safety and culture erode at the bottom. This is what happens when politics becomes more important than protection. When a government's primary goal is staying in power, even if that means risking the very people who elected them. The chaos in Britain right now isn't random. It's not unpredictable. It's a logical endpoint of years of ignored warnings, filtered statistics, and policies that prioritize global narratives over local realities. And the cost? A national identity stretched thin, communities fraying, and tens of thousands of dangerous offenders walking free, while citizens are told to stay calm, trust the system, and hope it works out. But hope isn't enough. The mood has shifted. People aren't just afraid. They are fed up, and whether it's on the streets or in the ballot box, that anger is starting to show. If you've been watching all this unfold and thinking, how did we get here? You're not alone. But the better question now might be, how much worse does it have to get before something finally changes? If you've got thoughts, drop them in the comments. If you're as stunned by the situation as we are, like this video, share it, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll be watching what comes next, closely. And the scariest part? This isn't a one-off crisis. It's the new normal, a slow-burn collapse dressed up in bureaucratic language and policy objectives. The government keeps insisting everything is under control, that the rising crime rates are unfortunate, but manageable, that the immigration system just needs some fine-tuning. But when mothers are tracking their daughter's location in real time every time they leave the house, when neighborhoods start organizing their own patrols because they don't trust the police to show up, when 41,920, with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now, it's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss. Like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. 3 convicted sex offenders are freely roaming the streets. You can't seriously say this is under control. Let's be real. You don't get to 62% more sex crimes committed by foreign nationals by accident. That kind of number doesn't sneak up on you. That happens because someone saw the warning signs and looked the other way multiple times. Over years. It's not just a policy failure, it's a moral failure. And here's where things really start to boil. The justice system seems to be bending over backwards not to confront the truth. Courts releasing repeat offenders early. Sentences that feel more like slaps on the wrist. And for what? To meet quotas? To avoid backlash? To avoid being accused of profiling? Meanwhile, British citizens are getting penalized for carrying pepper spray. Let that sink in. A woman who walks home with a key between her fingers for self-defense is breaking the law, but the man who assaulted someone last year and served half his time is back in the same neighborhood. No tracking, no warnings, just back. And yes, people are angry, but the word angry almost feels too soft for what's brewing right now. It's betrayal, disappointment, fear, and rage all wrapped into one. This isn't some fringe protest movement. It's parents, pensioners, and everyday citizens who've simply had enough. They are watching their towns change, watching violence go unpunished, and watching their leaders gaslight them with buzzwords and press conferences while doing nothing to stop it. So naturally, the protests are growing, not just online, but on the streets, in front of council offices, outside courts. Entire communities are showing up, waving signs and shouting, "Protect our children and Britain first, safety first." You might hear the media brush it off as right-wing hysteria, but let's be honest, this isn't about politics. It's about survival. When people don't feel safe, they act. And right now, they're acting because the people in charge aren't. And here's where it gets darker. There are now serious concerns about a deliberate suppression of demographic information in official crime reports. The kind of information that used to be standard, offender nationality, immigration status, background, has quietly been filtered out. The reasoning? Authorities say they don't want to incite hate or cause division. But the reality? It looks a lot like a cover-up. Because if the public knew the full scope of the crisis, who were committing these crimes, and how they got here, it would destroy the narrative being pushed by the government. I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe. And like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. The narrative that everything's fine, that immigration is purely a strength, and that Britain is simply going through a transition period. Well, the people living through this transition are calling it what it really is. A breakdown of order, a breakdown of trust, a breakdown of the basic understanding that citizens should come first in their own country. And then there's a police, once respected, now increasingly viewed as handcuffed by red tape and political correctness. Reports are surfacing of officers being told to stand down in certain neighborhoods. High crime areas becoming no-go zones, not because they are officially labeled that way, but because officers know that going could lead to chaos and zero backup. That's not just demoralizing. It's dangerous. For them and for everyone else. Meanwhile, violent altercations between migrants and authorities are becoming more common. Centers meant to house asylum seekers have become sites of unrest. Burnt-out buildings, escalating brawls, and in some cases, complete refusal to cooperate with law enforcement. But the response from the government? More funding, more resources, more excuses. It's gotten so bad that some critics are accusing the government of intentionally weakening the system on purpose. That they are not just ignoring red flags, they are pulling them down themselves. All in the name of an ideological commitment to multiculturalism, inclusion, and other feel-good slogans that sound nice in a press release, but mean nothing when your daughter is scared to take the bus home after dark. And that brings us to the SDS-40 scheme, possibly the most controversial part of this entire mess. Critics are calling it out as a thinly veiled attempt at demographic engineering. Not immigration reform, not asylum expansion, but an actual political tool to reshape the electorate. The accusation is simple. By importing large numbers of new arrivals, often from countries with very different cultural norms and values, the government is hoping to create a future voter base that will keep them in power. Whether that's Labour or any other party playing the long game, the strategy is the same. Sacrifice safety and cohesion now, gain control later. And if that sounds conspiratorial to you, just ask yourself this. Why wouldn't a political party use immigration as a strategy if they thought it meant staying in power for decades? Why else would they push so hard for policies that, time and time again, put criminals back on the streets, weaken border enforcement, and punish people for even talking about it? The silence from mainstream institutions is deafening. You've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm. You can't ask questions without being labeled. You can't raise concerns without being flagged. And you definitely can't demand answers without someone trying to cancel you. But the public isn't playing along anymore. The illusion is breaking. Even international observers are calling this out. Trump's remarks, controversial as always, are being echoed by leaders across Europe. The UK, they say, is sleepwalking into disaster. And when a former US president says Britain is self-destructing, that's not a casual comment. That's a global warning. At the core of this crisis is something deeper than crime stats and deportation policies. It's about the loss of control. The sense that the country is no longer governed by the will of its people, but by faceless bureaucrats, international laws, and politicians more interested in optics than outcomes. And as the cracks widen, the consequences grow. The rise in vigilante behavior, the booming black market for illegal self-defense tools, the social media accounts teaching people how to track predators themselves because they don't trust the police to do it. This isn't just rebellion. It's survival. The government's response? Empty promises. More reviews. Another task force. But people are beyond the point of hoping. They want action. They want protection. And they want a country that puts them first. This is a moment of reckoning. A test of whether a modern democracy like Britain can recognize its own dissent before it's too late. Whether leaders will finally wake up and admit the truth. You can't build a strong nation on a foundation of denial and dysfunction. There is still time to act, but the window is closing. And every day that goes by without change, without accountability, without serious reform, is another day that safety slips further away. And here's the chilling part. If this is collapse, then where's the bottom? Because it sure doesn't feel like we've hit it yet. The public can feel it. You can see it in the way people have stopped expecting help from the state. The shift is subtle at first. Less trust in institutions, more questions whisper between neighbors. But then it snowballs. People stop reporting crimes because they don't believe anything will happen. Women stop going out after dark. Local shops start closing early. And before long, you have entire communities living in quiet fear, convinced they've been left behind. Because that's exactly what it feels like, abandonment. And who wouldn't feel abandoned when the numbers keep climbing, the offenders keep walking free, and the government just keeps pretending like it's all fine? Over 40,000 predators, convicted, not suspected, are reportedly loose in the UK right now. 40,000. That's not a statistic. That's a city of sex with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now. It's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. Vendors scattered across the country, while authorities tell the public not to panic. But people are panicking, because they are smart enough to know what that means. It means every time you see a story about an assault, a grooming gang, or another case that slipped through the cracks, there's a high chance that predator was one of those 41,923. One of the ones who were rehabilitated, monitored, or just quietly released. And the excuses keep piling up. We're bound by international agreements. Human rights law prevents deportation. It's complicated. But to the public, it's not complicated at all. You don't need a law degree to understand that something's gone deeply, horrifically wrong when citizens are less protected than criminals. When the average person is more afraid of being labeled offensive than being violently attacked. And now, people are drawing their own conclusions. They are watching government funding pour into housing for illegal migrants, while British families can't get on waiting lists. They are watching police show up in full force to shut down protests, but nowhere to be seen when violent crime erupts in the same neighborhoods. They are seeing schools forced to adapt to massive demographic changes without support. And they are asking the question everyone's thinking, but no one in power wants to answer. Who is this country actually being run for? Because it sure doesn't feel like it's for the working-class families in Manchester, or the pensioners in Birmingham, or the single parents in London just trying to keep their kids safe. No, it feels like those people have become a problem for the government, not a priority. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You can't unsee the quiet censorship of crime data, the headlines that avoid uncomfortable truths, the reports that conveniently leave out the nationality or immigration status of perpetrators, all under the guise of not spreading hate. But here's the thing, covering up crime doesn't stop hate, it fuels it. Because when people feel lied to, they lose trust in everything. And when that trust is gone, all that's left is chaos. And chaos is exactly what's spreading. Migrant centers are turning into battlegrounds. There are reports of riots, fires, attacks on staff. But instead of addressing the deeper issues, unvetted entries, lack of assimilation, cultural tensions, the government throws more money at it and tells the public to be patient. It's just temporary. It's all part of a transition. Transition to what, exactly? A state where the rule of law is optional? Where public safety is a luxury? Where every criticism is called hate speech and every act of self-defense is criminalized? This isn't just negligence, it's ideological warfare against the basic expectation of order. And then there's a slow, steady creep of normalizing failure. You know the type, when politicians stop trying to fix things and start trying to redefine them. Like the idea that high crime is just urban reality. That disorder is inevitable in a modern, diverse society. That the public simply needs to adjust their expectations. No, the public is not the problem. Their expectations are not the problem. The problem is a leadership class that's more committed to optics than outcomes. They're more afraid of bad headlines and bad policies. More worried about being called intolerant than being ineffective. And in that void, where accountability should be, you get predators running free, protests being ignored, and a growing sense among ordinary people that they are on their own. So it's no surprise that vigilante networks are popping up, that underground self-defense markets are thriving, that people are starting to rely on each other instead of the institutions that were supposed to keep them safe. Because when the state fails to deliver security, society starts building it from scratch. But here's the danger with that. It only takes one spark, one wrong encounter, one group that takes it too far. And suddenly, you've got a fractured nation, not just socially, but morally. One where citizens stop believing in the law and start taking it into their own hands. That's not a solution. That's a powder keg. And we're already seeing the warning signs. Videos of confrontations going viral, communities arming themselves, political rhetoric heating up. The tension isn't simmering anymore, it's boiling. And still, silence from the top. Or worse, distraction. New initiatives rolled out to fight hate speech, combat disinformation, promote inclusivity. But not a word about the grooming gangs. Not a plan for mass deportation of criminal offenders. No actual timeline for reforming the SDS-40 scheme. Just noise. That's what people are tired of. Not just a crime. Not just the policy failures. But the endless stream of excuses from people who should be leading and instead are hiding. Because at the end of the day, none of this is sustainable. You can't have public safety, social trust, and national unity if one side is playing by the rules and the other is playing the system. And people know that. They feel it every time they open the news and see another predator was released early. Every time they hear about another assault in a town that used to feel safe. Every time they realize the government isn't losing control, it's giving it away. There's no way around it. The current model is collapsing. And unless something massive changes, it's only going to get worse. So what now? That's a question hanging over Britain like a storm cloud. The public has made its voice clear in protests, in opinion polls, on social media. They want safety. They want justice. They want leaders who put British citizens first. And yet, nothing moves. No mass deportations. No reforms. No accountability. Just more talk, more spin, and more time for the situation to rot from the inside out. This is the cost of willful neglect. Of letting ideology override common sense. Of treating criticism as a bigger threat than crime. And it's not just hurting individuals, it's poisoning the fabric of the country. At some point, leaders will have to choose power or people. But until then, the people are choosing for themselves. And the truth is brutal. The truth is that trust is snapped. That fragile thread between the people and those in charge. Cut. Not frayed, not weakening. Cut. Because once you realize that the system meant to protect you is actively working against your safety, you stop looking to it for solutions. That's where Britain is now. A country where everyday citizens are being gaslit into silence, told to be patient, to be tolerant, to be understanding, while the government tolerates predators, excuses violence, and understands the needs of offenders more than the rights of victims. You can feel it in the air. The mood is darker. The jokes aren't funny anymore. The news cycle is relentless, and it's always the same pattern. Crime, outrage, spin, silence. Rinse and repeat. Except now, people aren't just frustrated. They are disillusioned. And that's dangerous. Because disillusioned people don't protest. They detach. They stop voting. They stop engaging. They stop believing in solutions. And when people stop believing in the system, anything can happen. We've already seen hints of what that looks like. Underground watchdog groups. Citizen patrols. Entire areas where local communities do their own security checks because they know the police won't show up. People openly questioning the legitimacy of the courts, the media, and the political class. Not as a conspiracy, but as a rational response to repeated, observable failure. And all of this was avoidable. Let's not forget how we got here. The red flags were everywhere. Years of quiet warnings about grooming gangs. Immigration loopholes left unclosed. Prison reform that somehow meant letting violent offenders out early with no real oversight. An asylum system buckling under its own contradictions. Entire neighborhoods transformed without warning, without consultation, and without infrastructure to handle it. And instead of acknowledging any of it, the government buried the data, censored the conversation, accused anyone who spoke up of xenophobia, hate, or moral panic. But this wasn't panic. It was a demand for basic safety. And now, that demand is coming back louder and more urgent than ever. You have mothers keeping digital logs of their children's movements because they can't trust the streets anymore. You have fathers who used to believe in the law, now actively researching legal gray areas on how to protect their homes. You have pensioners sleeping with the lights on. Is this what modern Britain looks like? Because no one voted for this. No one asked for a future where children are taught to be silent about abuse to avoid cultural offense. No one agreed to an immigration system that imports unvetted individuals at record pace while the state pleads helplessness. And absolutely no one consented to a justice system that prioritizes international optics over domestic protection. And yet, here we are, living through the consequences of leadership that seems paralyzed, or worse, completely complicit. Even now, with the data out in the open, the silence from those in power is deafening. Over 41,000 convicted predators on the streets. A sex assault every 7 minutes. Entire towns reporting surges in crime linked to foreign offenders. But what do we get from the top? We are reviewing the situation. We are committed to inclusion. We are exploring all legal avenues. No, that's not good enough anymore. Not when women are afraid to leave their homes. Not when schools are being told to adapt rather than speak up. Not when victims are being shamed into silence while offenders are being shielded. And now there's this sense, this creeping awareness, that this isn't just neglect, it's strategy. That the chaos is tolerated because it serves a purpose. That by flooding the system, overloading services, and turning communities against each other, the public becomes too exhausted to resist. Critics say the SDS-40 scheme isn't just bad policy, it's intentional demographic manipulation. A long-term plan to reshape the electorate, import dependency, and ensure political dominance under the guise of humanitarian aid. And with every unvetted arrival, every early release, every suppressed statistic, it's starting to feel less like a theory and more like a reality. You can call it cynical. You can call it controversial. But you can't deny the results. Because the results are in your face. They're in your community. They're in your newsfeed, day after day. So what's the endgame? That's the question no one in power will answer. Not the Prime Minister. Not the Home Office. Not the media outlets still clinging to the illusion that everything is under control. Because deep down, maybe they know the answer isn't something they want the public to hear. Maybe the endgame is just this. Let the collapse happen slowly enough that people don't notice until it's too late. Let public safety degrade piece by piece. Let the data become less transparent. Let the definitions of safety, security, and community be rewritten until no one remembers what they used to mean. Until we accept that danger is just part of life now. That silence is safer than speaking up. That law and order are luxuries, not guarantees. But it's not too late. At least not yet. Because the pushback has begun. People are waking up. They're asking questions that were once taboo. They're refusing to play along with the narrative. They're organizing, documenting, and demanding answers. And they are not going away. They are not conspiracy theorists. They are not extremists. They are regular people. Parents, workers, teachers. They are tired of being told to sit down, shut up, and trust a system that's clearly failing them. And here's the thing. Once that kind of public resolve takes hold, it doesn't go away quietly. It grows. It spreads. It demands change. And it holds the powerful accountable. So what now? Now is a moment for truth, for transparency, for policies that put citizens' safety above political preservation, for leadership that understands that you can't build a future by sacrificing the present. Because if the trajectory continues unchecked, if the government keeps prioritizing perception over protection, then the consequences won't just be felt in protests and headlines. They'll be felt in everyday life, in every street where lights are dimmer, in every school that doesn't feel safe, in every law-abiding citizen who no longer believes that the law protects them. That's a real crisis. Not just a crime, but the crumbling belief that someone, somewhere, still cares enough to stop it. And here's the part that really stings. This could have been prevented. Not the whole crisis, maybe, but the scale of it, the weight of it, the daily headlines that feel like punchlines from a dystopian satire. None of this was inevitable. The warning signs weren't subtle. They were sirens. Year after year, the same red flags, early releases of violent offenders, migrant crime networks, failures to deport even the most dangerous criminals, reports buried, victims ignored, communities silenced under the threat of being labeled intolerant, all while the government draped itself in buzzwords like compassion, diversity, and inclusion, using those words not to empower people, but to shut them up, because when everything is offensive, nothing is allowed to be questioned. And that's a tactic. Not solve the problem, just control the outrage. But now the outrage is out of control. It's in the streets. It's in the living rooms of families who feel less safe than they did 5 years ago. It's in the faces of mothers who have to explain to their daughters why no one did anything, why no one stepped in to stop it. And they are not asking for miracles. They are asking for the basics. Protect our kids. Enforce the law. Stop releasing known predators. Deport foreign criminals. Speak honestly about what's happening. Is that radical, or is that just common sense? The fact that those demands are now seen as controversial, that's a problem. Because what's controversial shouldn't be asking for protection. What should be controversial is letting tens of thousands of known predators back onto the streets. What should be controversial is spending taxpayer money to house violent offenders while your own citizens can't get police to respond to a call. But in this upside-down reality, we're told to focus on being tolerant, to be quiet, to be polite, as if public safety is a matter of manners. It's not. It's the foundation of a functioning society. And once that's gone, what's left? We're approaching a tipping point. People are angry. They're organized. And they're not afraid of being called names anymore. Because once you realize your government is more concerned about how things look than what's actually happening, you stop playing nice. And the message now? It's clear. Fix this. Or step aside. Because the public is no longer begging. They are demanding. They are tired of empty gestures and press briefings. They want action. Real, measurable, unapologetic action that puts British citizens first, as it should have from the start. So if you're watching this and you feel like something is wrong, you're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You're just finally seeing it for what it is. Let us know what you think. Drop a comment. Like the video if it hit you, and share it with someone who still believes the truth should be louder than spin. And subscribe. We're not backing down from these stories. Because someone has to say it. Britain deserves better. And it starts by telling the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it gets.